Good morning. Welcome to ThinkinHR, episode 3 of our podcast. I'm Adrian Wilkinson, this is Ben Kunkar. Today we're doing a special show. We're talking more about the financial applications of HR and how that can make a difference to you as a company owner, how you can save money by utilising different policies and rely on policies in the future to fall back upon should your business hit trouble. We'll talk about lots of things that are really going to help you moving forward. My particular topics today, I'm going to be talking to you about wastage policies. I'm also in my Q&A going to be talking to you about a person who has written into us via our email address at ThinkinHR@avansure.com. They are buying a business, they inherit staff, and they want to know about cheaper regulations and how best they can get round the problem of the business losing money. Over to you, Ben.
Lovely. And as Adrian said, so today I'll be talking about training policies and putting them in place in order to save the business money in the long run. In my Q&A, I've had a lot of questions about menopause within the workplace. So I'll be going through a few scenarios and situations of what you need to be putting in place to make sure that you're adhering to, again, the right regulations. So if you want to kick off with your topics, Adrian.
Yeah, of course. So we'll start today with policies. Now, these are policies that company owners can utilise on a day-to-day basis to help the business with the financial aspects. So we'll start with day-to-day wastage. Wastage policies are very, very important to a business. I'll give you some scenarios, people that we've helped in the past or we've advised. So we've got a company, courier company. They provide vans to the drivers. The drivers are semi-self-employed, the kind of new hybrid employment we see on the high street now. And the van drivers are very careless, driving down streets, really trying to rush through, get as many parcels done as possible. They get paid more for the amount of parcels they deliver. And of course, the vans regularly have the wing mirrors pinged off, quite regular. So vans are always going in for repair. A business owner came to us and said, look, this is costing me thousands. What can I do? How can I manage this? What aspects can I talk about with the employees to stop this from happening? So I talked to them about a wastage policy. Now, wastage policy is useful in all different aspects of business. So what you can do is have a wastage policy where damages, should it be neglectful on the employee's part, can be deducted from salary. What we've got to be mindful of, and please bear this in mind, you can never deduct a salary below national minimum wage because then you're in breach of regulations. Yes. So that's very, very important. I think you had somebody you spoke to where a deduction had been made that way, didn't you, one time?
Yeah, I dealt with a lot of hospitality sectors where it was literally the same sort of, it's again a similar sort of topic, where there was waiters serving food, dropping plates, dropping food, overspilling pints. But the problem was the staff were all on minimum wage. They didn't receive the tips, etc., stuff like that. So as they started deducting it, they went over 15% below minimum wage. So again, it ended up affecting the business massively because it's an unlawful deduction. You can't be doing it. And in this case, they actually didn't have a policy in place to say they could take the wastage, which was even worse. And the business ended up getting fined thousands, which, again, we spoke through. We've got stuff in place now and we're starting to make it better for them and adjust the ways that the policies are structured. But it is something you have to be mindful. And even if it's not something that you're dealing with on a day-to-day basis, as me and Adrian have said from the start, when you're putting policies in place, it's planning for every eventuality. It may not happen. You may not put it in place straight away. You may not be something that's affecting you straight away. But as long as you've got the policy there to use it as and when you need it, that's what it's there for.
Okay. So wastage, very important. Get it in place from day one, I would say. If you're just starting out in business, look into getting that within your handbook policies. If you want some advice on it, give us a call. Our numbers are on the LinkedIn page. You can reach us on 0161527 1000. Alternatively, ThinkinHR@avansure.com. Send us all your questions in. If you want some advice, get in touch with myself or Ben. In addition to wastage, one thing that is very, very important is a layoff policy financially. Now, the amount of businesses that come up against financial problems is astronomical. I don't need to tell you about the current climate, previous climates we've been through. If we go back to the recession, many businesses were failing. A lot of them could have survived with the right policies in place. That's probably a broad statement, but if they had a layoff policy, and this has been used in manufacturing for many, many years, to handle times when they don't have orders coming in, they're able to lay off staff, which obviously is a massive saving on the business. They don't have any particular overheads regarding salary. Without that layoff policy, you can't do it. So very, very important that you follow the correct rules and regulations relating to that. If you want some advice, then again, get in touch. But I would say for any business, if you have a layoff policy for the future, should your business hit problems, then you're going to rely on that heavily to keep you afloat.
No, massively. And like, just very important with layoff clauses, short of work policies, stuff like that, you've got to be mindful that within a 13-week period, if someone's laid off for 6 non-consecutive weeks, they can claim redundancy. So you've got to be mindful. It's not a solution as a long-term solution. It's a quick fix just to save you money whilst you've got either work problems, it's the weather's calling things off, whatever it may be, to then go again. So just be mindful that if it's 6 non-consecutive weeks in a 13-week period or 4 consecutive weeks, then again, the employee can claim redundancy.
Excellent. Okay. So Ben, I believe you want to talk about training?
Yeah. So today I was going to talk about training policies because, as everyone knows, it's something that is, well, we need it in the business. For a lot of businesses, it's essential that you have it in place. You have to have certain training by law. So I was going to talk about how you claim the monetary value back if you're constantly getting staff that you're bringing in from recruitment, you're training them, and then they're leaving. So training. So employees can request training from straight away. They can request any sort of training that's benefits or is going to help their effectiveness within a working environment. So basically it benefits your business. So employers, it's not something that you have to allow them to do, but it's always got to be considered. And again, why wouldn't you consider it if it's going to benefit the business? If it's going to add value to you, it's one of them things. How much training is an employee allowed to undertake? So the legislation places no limits on training. So the employee could be training constantly, unless you're in like sort of care environments where they are structured to certain amounts of training. It's what you wish, what you feel is going to benefit you as a business. If people are constantly off for training and it's impacting your actual workload, then it's not benefiting you. Whereas once or twice a year, it's going to be of great use to yourselves. Who pays for training? And this is a massive one. So a lot of companies will use e-learning courses, which are either like CPD accredited for the HR side of things, or again, you've got IOSH accredited courses, ROSPA accredited courses. They'll use them because they're just easier these days. You can switch the laptop on, go through a few modules, done. Your training's sorted. It's something that the employees can do in work time. A lot of them will choose to do out of work time. But if they're doing it in work time, you're not obligated as an employer to pay for the training unless specified. However, a lot of businesses will do it. So if you're constantly forking out training for your staff and you've got people that have done 2 weeks worth of training, it's cost you thousands, what happens if they go? You've just gave someone else a really good employee. So what you need to put in place is a really robust training policy within your handbooks. What this needs to state is the duration and the amounts. So if you, for example, someone's been with you 6 months and they've done 3 counts of training, it has to be set out as this person will pay X amount back if they leave within a 2-year period, another amount if it's within a 1-year period, again, 6 months, however you want to set it out, but it has to be value and time. Just otherwise, it's not going to stand. So essentially, if they do go, you're going to be saving thousands there. The biggest thing that I get asked is, can anybody ask for time off to do training? And the answer will always be yes. as a business, it's best practice to let anybody. The actual law states that they have to be with you for 6 months for you to have to even consider it. Again, as a business, for me, it wouldn't make sense to not consider paying the training unless someone's constantly taking the mix, saying they want to do training every single day, and it's affecting your workload. Like I said before, it becomes counterproductive. But again, consider it. You don't have to. You're not obliged to let them do the training. Again, they can appeal it. And if you say no to the training, they're allowed to appeal it, but this is only allowed to be done once a year. So if you have a good business case as to why you can't, because you've got too much work on, you haven't got enough man hours within the office, again, you're quite happy to say so. You have to prove it again. But again, once it's been shown, they can appeal it. But if you've got good evidence, it's not going to stand.
We had a very recent company, by the way, who got in touch about such training, but it was more over a long-term period. So around, I think about 6 months a year, a chap had spent an absolute fortune training a manager in all aspects of the business, to manage the business, manage staff, everything, all these management courses, and it cost him, an awful lot of money. Unfortunately, I didn't put any training policies in place, and also no restricted covenants. So, of course, what happened is this person got to a level, left his business, took half his clients with him, and started up again. I'm sure if you're listening from, and I'm not being stereotypical, but this happens a lot in hairdressing.
Oh, it does.
So the amount of hairdressers that reach out to us and say, "Oh, all my clients are gone." So touching upon the training, as well as being able to perhaps look at how you can restrict the wastage in terms of training costs. Looking at restricted covenants is also important, because when somebody gets to a certain skill level, there's very little for you to do to stop them from going out to become a rival in business, is there?
Oh, it's massive.
And a restricted covenant has to be done in a certain way. So there's some quite, what's the word I'm looking for? Some really ambitious,
very
ambitious
vague.
restricted covenants, like somebody can't work within 30 miles in the same industry as you, and things like that. We've had questions 100%. Like that. I want to put in this clause where 30, for 30 miles around my business, people can't work in the same industry. But that's just not going to work. What you can do very much is retain the current customers you have, because you can say they're not allowed to approach the customers that exist for your business. So that really helps you, gives you a legal standpoint to take action should they begin to take clients off you.
Oh, massively, because everyone knows, and even being staff myself, staff will always be, to any business, they'll be their biggest asset. But they can also be, because they're your biggest asset, they're your biggest worry. If you train a member of staff for years, you feed them all knowledge, again, especially with, like you just said, the specialist areas where it's hairdressing, care, where you are doing a profession, the chances are a lot of people get to a point where your best staff want to open their own business, or they want to move on and do something they see as bigger. So you've also, as well as giving them that knowledge, you've got to protect your business, because if they start taking your clients, or again, you're getting charged thousands of pounds and they're just leaving and you're stuck with a bill, how does that impact your business? Because you've got to go and then train someone else because there's a spot that you have to fill. Can you do that? Is it affordable? Does it even make business sense? The chances are it doesn't. And all for the sake of having a couple of policies in place, why wouldn't you?
Those pieces of papers are very much a guarantee and insurance policy. I like to think of it as a toolkit. So every policy you have is a piece of your toolkit to protect your business.
Oh, 100%.
So if you're not thinking, oh, I'm robust in my policies, my contracts, then you need to get that looked at and look at, ways in which you can protect yourself in the future and be able to make decisions, because until you have something written down, no matter what happens, you can't draw upon it as a legal standpoint. So there are cases where people have had thefts from the business.
Yep.
They've not been able to do anything about it in particular because they never had a policy in place.
And it is, and it's crazy. And like Adrian said, think of it as a toolkit. HR policies will always be a toolkit to the business. If you go on a job with a toolkit where you've got some nails, some screws, but you've not got a hammer or a screwdriver, it's not going to happen. So one policy will always affect another. We've talked about training policies, wastage policies, and restricted covenant. Without all of them, the chances are certain elements, you're still going to lose money. So, or you're never going to do the job properly. So make sure that it is robust and you do have every policy in there that's going to suit the requirements of your business. I wanted to jump onto my little bit of a Q&A, because this has been coming through quite a lot. I got another email this morning about it. And again, it's not something that's spoken about often, I believe, because before this year, I didn't really hear anyone speak about menopause policies.
I mean, it's very welcome, I think, for this kind of thing to be acknowledged that it's out there, because to be fair, middle-aged ladies in particular have struggled, with it quietly for long enough, and
far too long, if you ask me.
And maybe in some ways where somebody isn't well enough to work, or they have received quite damning treatments in many ways, in many cases, haven't they, as a result of that. So it is quite a welcome thing that people are starting to recognise.
Yeah, exactly. And it's good that we are recognising these things, because when we're talking on these podcasts and we're talking about these policies, we are always advising businesses we want to help you and help your staff, because you helping your staff will help your business. You making sure that you're covered isn't all about, I want to sack staff, I want to get rid of staff, my staff are horrendous. You could have the best, most loyal staff. You want to protect them for these sort of eventualities. So menopause at work is always covered by a piece of legislation. So in your policies, it's the Discrimination Act, Equality and Discrimination Act of 2010. And I don't want this to, and again, I say this because I want to make sure that we're saving you guys time and money. A lot of people and a lot of businesses out there will be telling you to get a menopause policy put in place. What you don't want to do, and in my opinion, I wouldn't go out putting a menopause policy in place, because it's already covered by the Equality and Discrimination Act. And all you're doing there is causing yourself more work. And once you start doing a menopause policy, you then have to do another policy, because hang on, why is that one outlined but not another, and not another, and not another? So keep it under the Equality and Discrimination Act of 2010. Just make sure that your staff understand about it a little bit more, because it also, for me, it will affect businesses there with productivity. Because if a staff member, like you said, I've actually got a case that I'm going to talk about, because this person that asked me the question has a staff member that's always been one of the best, always been up there, not the best, but always been up there with everyone else. And now her productivity's just fallen a little bit. And I was asked, it's a business where they don't really understand it. They've never gone through it. They've never had, it's quite new to the female ward in this business. Sure. It's a construction, just so everyone knows, it's construction that the sector they're in. And they just don't know how to manage it. And this boss has said to me, do I performance manage them? Because the productivity's dropped and it's affecting the business. And it wasn't that he's trying to get rid of this person, but he just doesn't understand why she can't do the role or what it's been affected. And he doesn't know how to deal with it. So that's what we're going to talk about. But I'm going to start off with this case so you can understand the highs of it. I'm going to read this one so I know it right. So this one was through a lady called Miss Merchant, who worked for BT. She was being performance managed for capability concerns. Her manager had received a report from her GP, which indicated there were health issues related to menopause. In this case, he chose to disregard the medical evidence and dismissed her for poor performance. He also made the additional mistake of relying on his own personal experience of his wife undergoing menopause, which again is crazy.
No two people are affected.
No, exactly.
So I could have a headache right now and quite merrily get
on very much affected. Yeah. To me,
but somebody could have a migraine and have to lay up for 2 days.
Oh, exactly.
So
in this case, rather than relying on the fresh medical evidence, he relied on his anecdotal evidence of his situation with his wife. So the tribunal found against BT as the manager had failed to follow the capability policy, which referred to seeking medical evidence It also concluded BT would not have treated a male in comparable circumstances suffering with failed concentration in the same way. And this is where it's important for me. There's so many utensils out there and places that we can go to for medical advice, people in professions that will help and you can seek advice from. We need to stop doing it alone, because just because, like we just said, just because you've dealt with someone before that found it okay, could cope in their work environment, it was all right, it didn't affect them, it doesn't mean that it's the same case for everyone. And in this case, the business will actually find thousands, and it was thousands, because it's discrimination, and it falls under age, sex discrimination. So do you really want to put yourself in a predicament where you're potentially in tribunal or going to court when it's a phone call away to seek medical advice, a phone call away to seek employment law advice? For me, it's a no-brainer just to pick up the phone or drop an email if you're going through anything like this, just to ensure that your policies are compliant and your procedure that you're carrying out is effective and against keeping you safe.
Yeah, I think maybe menopause is a hot topic at the moment as well, and it's something that people do need to discuss a little more and get used to dealing with a little better, more effectively, should I say.
No, definitely. And for me, you're never going to understand everything. Me and Adrian will not understand menopause. Well, I'm hoping so anyway, Adrian.
There is a male menopause now, by the way. I'm told by my partner the other day there is a male menopause, so I was quite surprised to hear it after the man flu jokes that she made.
But we won't understand it into that predicament. So that's why, for me, always seek medical advice when it's coming to something like this.
Yeah.
Understand and listen to the professionals so that you can have a clear outcome. If it is something that you need to make adjustments to, make them adjustments. It's always going to keep your business safe. And them little changes now will save you thousands in cost. They'll save you thousands in time and stress and energy in the future as well.
Excellent. Okay. So I'll come to my Q&A. Mine is quite a complex one. I received an email from somebody through our email at ThinkinHR@aventure.com. They're buying a new business. Now, the business is a failing business. So there are 5 shops, retail. They sell basically newsagents off license, but they're being run into the ground a little bit. They've employed too many staff, for instance. There didn't need to be as big a salary going out, obviously. And effectively, this business was bought quite cheaply. And this gentleman bought the business with a view to turning it around. Now, one of the problems he's got, while buying the 5 shops, he inherits 10 staff. He doesn't need them. He says for the opening hours, he could quite adequately, with family members, cope with 6 staff. So 4 staff he wants to get rid of. Under cheaper regulations, he has to keep the 4 staff in. So what he's asked me about is, what can I do? How can I get around this? Now, a lot of people don't understand with cheaper regulations, although the regulations do state that you have to have respect the current working regulations in regards to the existing staff. There are ways around this if you create a valid business argument. You've got to tread incredibly carefully with this. It's one of the most complex areas of employment law, and anyone in employment law will tell you it can be a bit of a minefield in terms of how you cope. The bottom line, I guess, is that you've got to go through the correct consultation process with employees. You need to consult them correctly in the right manner. So again, you can't be sitting down with somebody and saying, look, I've got to get rid of 4 staff. I think you should be one of them. That kind of thing. You've got to be very, very careful how you tread. Some people may volunteer.
I mean, we laugh, but this is done very often. It's something that we hear on the day.
What about the first in, last?
Yeah, first in,
last in,
first out. First out. Yeah,
first out. Yeah, we hear it on a day-to-day basis. So, but you've got to follow a due process, and that is a full consultation, and that has to be done in a way that you're not deeming to discriminate against anybody. You're not deeming to select somebody for redundancy, for instance. You're not deeming to select somebody based on age, gender. capability even. At that point in time under TUPE regulations, they are protected in their role. Some people will volunteer during the correct process being carried out. They will volunteer for redundancy, and that may cost you a few £1,000 or whatever for the redundancy package to be put together for that. But ultimately, beneficially moving forward for the business, it's going to help. You're going to achieve the outcomes that you want. What I would say with this, never approach a TUPE process without employment lawyers on board. As I say, it's an absolute minefield. If somebody complains, and very often they will, that they feel they're being singled out in some way, or they're being selected for, it's being intimated that they should leave the business. That's one that happens quite a lot, isn't it? It's where somebody sits down and said, look, I can't keep 10 staff on while we're having this conversation with me, this sort of attitude, isn't it?
Yeah, people are always going to think it's aimed at them, no matter what, even if it's not aimed at them.
Yeah, exactly.
You know what it's like.
Yeah. So tread very, very carefully. If you want some advice, we can even get a consultant out to you from Avonshore to have a sit down with you, go through what processes you need to be looking at, how you handle the selection process. We can hold your hand all the way through it. Give us a call, 0161 527 1000, or ThinkinHR@avonshore.com. Pop us an email with your details. We'll always return to you. When we get a Q&A, and the Q&A session, it may seem like we're only selecting a couple of questions, but actually, if you send us a question on the email or you give us a call, we'll always advise you. It doesn't matter, whether we have 100 in the mailbox. We'll always endeavour to get you the advice that you need. We will just choose a couple of topics each week, as that's what we're capable of doing in a half-hour session.
Yeah, exactly. We'll always get back to you, and even the ones that we're doing on the podcast, we always get back to people personally. I like to give them a call because with employment law, HR, there's never a direct answer, which is why you'll normally get, it depends on what your policy stays. It depends on the situation. It depends on the scenario, the length of time the person's been with you. There's always factors that you're going to have to look into, which is why we'll always give you a call afterwards. What I'd say on that one as well, to be fair, Adrian, because it happens so often when people don't even realise that TUPE comes into effect in cleaning companies is a massive one.
Yeah.
Because I've had it before when you've had people that have been contracted to clean for a business, and then the business has wanted to do the cleaning in-house. And what people haven't realised is because that person was contracted to solely work over 70% of their hours on that business, they had to be considered under the TUPE regulations for that job and that position.
Yeah, quite often as well with that. Sometimes you can take over a cleaning contract, but you've got to keep the existing staff because they're still under contract, and that happens quite a lot. And you've got to be really careful because TUPE does apply in that circumstance.
Yeah, exactly. So, and that's what I said. That's why for me, TUPE will always be a minefield. There's so many grey areas. There's so many things that people don't understand. You've got people in HR that don't understand it, and that's not because it's a lack of knowledge, or it's just the fact that it is such a minefield and there's so many things that you have to factor in when you're looking into TUPE. So for me, don't do it and then ask. Always seek legal advice prior to going through these situations so they can talk you through the process, because you'll normally have like a 3-month window prior to taking over a business where you have to start consulting, you have to start looking into documents, because if a new business, if you're taking over a business and you don't have these documents, then you're going to be, you could potentially be left with so many issues, so many costs of holidays, sick pay, whatever it may be. You'll incur that without even realizing. So do seek legal advice before going through TUPE.
Yeah, you need to make sure you've done, from a commercial aspect, you need to make sure you've done your due diligence on the business as well, and finding out exactly what state it's in, what holidays staff are entitled to at the present time. Like you say, Ben, are there any outstanding monies owed by employees, or you've got some training monies like we mentioned earlier. Really have a look into the due diligence of the business before purchasing, and get somebody involved like ourselves who can guide you through the whole process and help you through TUPE regulations.
No, lovely. So, like I said, if you do have any questions on the topics that we've discussed today, again, give us a call on the number that Adrian said, the 0161 527 1000, or drop an email to ThinkinHR@avonshore.com. again, for our next one, we will throw a little poll out on LinkedIn. So if you do have us on LinkedIn, jump on there, or if not, just jump to the ThinkinHR page. We'll put a poll on for what you want to hear in a fortnight's time. But any more questions, feel free to drop us an email, give us a call. We'll be back on in a fortnight's time with a new special.
Yep. Look
Anything
forward
from
to
you, Adrian.
Yeah, we just look forward to the next episode. We know it's a new venture for us. Our first time today on YouTube. So welcome to everyone who's watching us live on YouTube. The chat feature will be open for you to make comments and ask questions in the chat feature, and we'll review that afterwards in addition. Please subscribe and like the channel if you like what you saw today. That helps us to promote the channel. We're going to be here for a long time doing this. So if you have any suggestions, by the way, on the show that you'd like us to feature, any kind of areas or topics, just send us a message to thinkinhr@avinsure.com. Any complex issues, the complex the better. We like being tested, don't we?
I mean, you like being tested, me not so much.
Okay.
But it's been lovely doing the podcast today, guys. We'll be back on in a fortnight's time. We look forward to receiving your questions in the meantime. Take care, and we'll see you in a couple of weeks' time.
Thank you.